Chapter 17. I put a few million extra pounds on. The horrible thing was, I could see the family resemblance. Atlas had the same regal expression as Zoe, the same cold, proud look in his eyes that Zoe sometimes got when she was mad, though on him it looked 1,000 times more evil. He was all the things I'd originally disliked about Zoe, with none of the good I'd come to appreciate. "Let Artemis go," Zoe demanded. Atlas walked closer to the chained goddess. "Perhaps you'd like to take the sky for her, then? Be my guest." Zoe opened her mouth to speak, but Artemis said, "No! Do not offer, Zoe, I forbid you." Atlas smirked. He knelt next to Artemis and tried to touch her face, but the goddess bit him, almost taking off his fingers. "Hoo-hoo!" Atlas chuckled. "See, daughter, Lady Artemis likes her new job. I think I will have all the Olympians take turns carrying my burden once Lord Kronos rules again. And this is the center of our palace. It will teach those weaklings some humility." I looked at Annabeth. She was desperately trying to tell me something. She motioned her head toward Luke, but all I could do was stare at her. I hadn't noticed before, but something about her had changed. Her blonde hair was now streaked with gray. "From holding the sky," Talia muttered, as if she'd read my mind. "The weight should have killed her." "I don't understand," I said. Why can't Artemis just let go of the sky?" Atlas laughed. "How little you understand, young one. This is the point where the sky and the earth first met, where Ouranos and Gaia first brought forth their mighty children, the Titans. The sky still yearns to embrace the earth. Someone must hold it at bay, or else it would crush down upon this place, instantly flattening the mountain and everything within 100 leagues. Once you've taken the burden, there is no escape." Atlas smiled. "Unless someone else takes it from you." He approached us, studying Talia and me. "So these are the best heroes of the age, eh? Not much of a challenge." "Fight us," I said, "and let's see." "Have the gods taught you nothing? An immortal does not fight a mere mortal directly. It is beneath our dignity. I will have Luke crush you instead." "So you're another coward," I said. Atlas's eyes glowed with hatred. With difficulty he turned his attention to Talia. "As for you, daughter of Zeus, it seems Luke was wrong about you." "I wasn't wrong," Luke managed. He looked terribly weak, and as he spoke every word as if it was painful. If I didn't hate his guts so much, I would have almost felt sorry for him. "Talia, you can still join us. Call the Ophiotaurus. It will come to you. Look." He waved his hand, and next to us, a pool of water appeared, a pond ringed in black marble, big enough for the Ophiotaurus. I could imagine Bessie in that pool. In fact, the more I thought about it, the more I was sure I could hear Bessie mooing. "Don't think about him!" Suddenly, Grover's voice was inside my head, the empathy link. I could feel his emotions. He was on the verge of panic. "I'm losing Bessie! Block the thoughts!" I tried to make my mind go blank. I tried to think about basketball players, skateboards, different kinds of candy in my mom's shop. Anything but Bessie. "Talia, call the Ophiotaurus." Luke persisted. "And you will be more powerful than the gods." "Luke." Her face was full of pain. Her voice was full of pain. "What happened to you? Don't you remember all those times we talked? All those times we cursed the gods? Our fathers would have done nothing for us. Our fathers have done nothing for us. They have no right to rule the world." Talia shook her head. "Free Annabeth. Let her go." "If you join me," Luke promised, "it can be like old times. The three of us together, fighting for a better world. Please, Talia, if you don't agree." His voice faltered. "It's my last chance. He will use the other way, if you don't agree. Please." I didn't know what he meant, but the fear in his voice sounded real enough. I believed that Luke was in danger. His life depended on Talia joining the cause, and I was afraid Talia might believe it too. "Do not, Talia," Zoe warned. "We must fight them." Luke waved his hand again, and a fire appeared. A bronze brazier, just like the one at camp. A sacrificial flame. "Talia," I said. "No." Behind Luke, a golden sarcophagus began to glow. As it did, I saw images in the mist all around us, black marble walls rising, the ruins becoming whole, a terrible and beautiful place rising around us, made of fear and shadow. We will raise Mount Orthus right here," Luke promised, in a voice so strained it was hardly his. "Once more it will be stronger and greater than Olympus. Look, Talia, we are not weak." He pointed toward the ocean, and my heart fell. Marching up the side of the mountain from the beach where the Princess Andromeda was docked was a great army. Draconae, Lastrygonians, monsters and half-bloods, hellhounds, harpies, and other things I couldn't even name. The whole ship must have been emptied, because there were hundreds, maybe more than I'd seen on board last summer, and they were marching toward us. In a few minutes, they would be here. This is just a taste of what's to come, Luke said. Soon we will be ready to storm Camp Half-Blood, and after that, Olympus itself. All we need is your help. For a terrible moment, Talia hesitated. She gazed at Luke, her eyes full of pain, as if the only thing she wanted in the world was to believe him. Then she leveled her spear. You aren't Luke. I don't know you anymore. Yes, you do, Talia, he pleaded. Please, don't make me. Don't make him destroy you. There was no time. If that army got to the top of the hill, we would be overwhelmed. I met Annabeth's eyes again. She nodded. I looked at Talia and Zoe and decided it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to die fighting with friends like this. Now, I said. Together, we charged. Talia went straight for Luke. The power of her shield was so great that his dragon woman bodyguards fled in panic, dropping the golden coffin and leaving him alone. But despite his sickly appearance, Luke was still quick with his sword. He snarled like a wild animal and counterattacked. When his sword backbiter met Talia's shield, a ball of lightning erupted between them, frying the air with yellow tendrils of power. As for me, I did the stupidest thing in my life, which was saying a lot. I attacked the Titan Lord Atlas. He laughed as I approached. A huge javelin appeared in his hands. His silk suit melted into full Greek battle armor. Go on, then. Percy! Zoe yelled. Beware! I knew what she was warning me about. Chiron told me long ago. Immortals are constrained by ancient rules, but a hero can go anywhere, challenge anyone as long as he has the nerve. Once I attacked, however, Atlas was free to attack back, directly, with all his might. I swung my sword, and Atlas knocked me aside with the shaft of his javelin. I flew through the air and slammed into a black wall. It wasn't mist anymore. The palace was rising, brick by brick. It was becoming real. Fool! Atlas screamed gleefully, swatting aside one of Zoe's arrows. Do you think simply because you could challenge that petty war god that you could stand up to me? The mention of Ares sent a jolt through me. I shook off my daze and charged again. If I could get to that pool of water, I could double my strength. The javelin's point slashed toward me like a scythe. I raised Riptide, planning to cut his weapon at the shaft, but my arm felt like lead. My sword suddenly weighed a ton. And I remembered Ares' warning, spoken at the beach in Los Angeles so long ago. When you need it most, your sword will fail you. Not now, I pleaded, but it was no good. I tried to dodge, but the javelin caught me in the chest and sent me flying like a rag doll. I slammed into the ground, my head spinning. I looked up and found that I was at the feet of Artemis, still straining under the weight of the sky. Run, boy, she told me. You must run. Atlas was taking his time, coming toward me. My sword was gone and had skittered away over the edge of the cliff. It might reappear in my pocket, maybe in a few seconds, but it didn't matter. I'd be dead by then. Luke and Talia were fighting like demons. Lightning cracked around them. Annabeth was on the ground, desperately struggling to free her hands. Die, little hero, Atlas said. He raised his javelin to impale me. No, Zoe yelled, and a volley of silver arrows sprouted from the armpit chink in the Atlas's armor. Ah! He bellowed and turned toward his daughter. I reached down and felt Riptide back in my pocket. I couldn't fight Atlas, even with a sword, and then a chill went down my back. I remembered the words of the prophecy. The Titan's curse must one withstand. I couldn't hope to beat Atlas, but there was someone who might stand a chance. The sky, I told the goddess. Give it to me. No, boy, Artemis said. Her forehead was beaded with metallic sweat like quicksilver. You don't know what you're asking. It will crush you. Annabeth took it. She barely survived. She had the spirit of a true huntress. You will not last so long. I'll die anyway, I said. Give me the weight of the sky. I didn't wait for her answer. I took out Riptide and slashed through her chains, and then I stepped next to her and braced myself on one knee, holding up my hands, and touched the cold, heavy clouds. For a moment, Artemis and I bore the weight together. It was the heaviest thing I'd ever felt, as if I were being crushed under 1,000 trucks. I wanted to black out from the pain, but I breathed deeply. I can do this. Then Artemis slipped out from under the burden, and I held it alone. Afterward, I tried many times to explain what it felt like. I couldn't. Every muscle in my body turned to fire. My bones felt like they were melting. I wanted to scream, but I didn't have strength to open my mouth. I began to sink lower and lower to the ground, the sky's weight crushing me. "Fight back," Grover's voice said inside my head. "Don't give up." I concentrated on breathing. If I could just keep the sky aloft for a few more seconds. I thought about Bianca, who'd given her life so that we could get here. If she could do that, I can hold the sky. My vision turned fuzzy. Everything was tinged with red. I caught glimpses of the battle, but I wasn't sure if I was seeing clearly. There was Atlas in full battle armor, jabbing with his javelin, laughing insanely as he fought, and Artemis a blur of silver. She had 2 wicked hunting knives, each as long as her arm, and she slashed wildly at the Titan, dodging and leaping with unbelievable grace. She seemed to change form as she maneuvered. She was a tiger, a gazelle, a bear, a falcon, or perhaps it was just my fevered brain. Zoe shot arrows at her father, aimed for the chinks in his armor. He roared in pain each time one found its mark, but they affected him like bee stings. He just got madder and kept fighting. Talia and Luke went spear on sword, lightning still flashing around them. Talia pressed Luke back with the aura of her shield. Even he was not immune to it. He retreated, wincing and growling in frustration. "Yield!" Talia yelled. "You never could beat me, Luke." He bared his teeth. "We'll see, my old friend." Sweat poured down my face. My hands were slippery. My shoulders would have screamed with agony if they could. I felt the little vertebrae in my spine were being welded together by a blowtorch. Atlas advanced, pressing Artemis. She was fast, but his strength was unstoppable. His javelin slammed into the earth where Artemis had been a split second before, and a fissure opened in the rocks. He leapt over it and kept pursuing her. She was leading him back toward me. "Get ready," she spoke in my mind. I was losing the ability to think through the pain. My response was something like, "Wow! You fight well for a girl." Atlas laughed. "But you're no match for me." He feinted with the tip of his javelin, and Artemis dodged. I saw the trick coming. Atlas's javelin swept around and knocked Artemis's legs off the ground. She fell, and Atlas brought up his javelin tip for the kill. "No!" Zoe screamed. She leapt between her father and Artemis and shot an arrow straight into the Titan's forehead, where it lodged like a unicorn's horn. Atlas bellowed in rage. He swept aside his daughter with the back of his hand, sending her flying into the black rocks. I wanted to shout her name, run to her aid, but I couldn't speak or move. I couldn't even see where Zoe had landed. Then Atlas turned on Artemis with a look of triumph on his face. Artemis seemed to be wounded. She didn't get up. The first blood in a new war. Atlas gloated. Then he stabbed downward. As fast as thought, Artemis grabbed his javelin shaft. It hit the earth right next to her, and she pulled backward, using the javelin like a lever, kicking the Titan Lord and sending him flying over her. I saw him coming down on top of me and realized what would happen. I loosened my grip on the sky, and as Atlas slammed into me, I didn't try to hold on. I let myself be pushed out of the way and rolled for all I was worth. The weight of the sky dropped onto Atlas's back, almost smashing him flat until he managed to get to his knees, struggling to get out from under the crushing weight of the sky. But it was too late. "No!" he bellowed so hard it shook the mountain. "Not again!" Atlas was trapped under his old burden. I tried to stand and fell back again, dazed from pain. My body felt like it was burning up. Talia backed Luke to the edge of a cliff, but they still fought on, next to the golden coffin. Talia had tears in her eyes. Luke had a bloody slash across his chest, and his pale face glistened with sweat. He lunged at Talia and slammed him with her shield. Luke's sword spun out of his hands and clattered to the rocks. Talia put her spear point to his throat. For a moment, there was silence. "Well," Luke said. He tried to hide it, but I could hear fear in his voice. Talia trembled with fury. Behind her, Annabeth came scrambling, finally free from her bonds. Her face was bruised and streaked with dirt. "Don't kill him!" "He's a traitor," Talia said. "A traitor!" In my daze, I realized that Artemis was no longer with me. She'd run off toward the black rocks where Zoe had fallen. "We'll bring Luke back," Annabeth pleaded, "to Olympus. He'll be useful." "Is that what you want, Talia?" Luke sneered. "To go back to Olympus and triumph? To please your dad?" Talia hesitated, and Luke made a desperate grab for her spear. "No!" Annabeth shouted, but it was too late. Without thinking, Talia kicked Luke away. He lost his balance, terror on his face. And then he fell. "Luke!" Annabeth screamed. We rushed to the cliff's edge. Below us, the army from the Princess Andromeda had stopped in amazement. They were staring at Luke's broken form on the rocks. Despite how much I hated him, I couldn't stand to see it. I wanted to believe he was still alive, but that was impossible. The fall was at least 50 feet, and he wasn't moving. One of the giants looked up and growled, "Kill them!" Talia was stiff with grief, tears streaming down her cheeks. I pulled her back as a wave of javelins sailed over our heads. We ran for the rocks, ignoring the curses and threats of Atlas as we passed. "Artemis!" I yelled. The goddess looked up, her face almost grief-stricken as Talia's. Zoe lay in the goddess's arms. She was breathing. Her eyes were open, but still. "The wound is poisoned," Artemis said. "Atlas poisoned her?" I asked. "No," the goddess said, "not Atlas." She showed us the wound in Zoe's side. I'd almost forgotten her scrape with Ladin the dragon. The bite was much worse than Zoe had let on. I could barely look at the wound. She had charged into battle against her father with a horrible cut already sapping her strength. "The stars," Zoe murmured. "I cannot see them." "Nectar and ambrosia," I said. "Come on, we have to get her some." No one moved. Grief hung in the air. The army of Kronos was just below the rise. Even Artemis was too shocked to stir. We might have met our doom right there, but then I heard a strange buzzing noise. Just as the army of monsters came over the hill, a Sopwith camel swooped down out of the sky. "Get away from my daughter!" Dr. Chase called down as his machine guns burst to life, peppering the ground with bullet holes and startling the whole group of monsters into scattering. "Dad?" yelled Annabeth in disbelief. "Run!" he called back, his voice growing fainter as the biplane swooped by. This shook Artemis out of her grief. She stared up at the antique plane, which was now banking around for another strafe. "A brave man," Artemis said with grudging approval. "Come, we must get Zoe away from here." She raised her hunting horn to her lips, and its clear sound echoed in the valleys of Marin. Zoe's eyes were fluttering. "Hang in there," I told her. "It'll be all right." The Sopwith camel swooped down again. A few giants threw javelins, and one flew straight between the wings of the plane. But the machine guns blazed. I realized with amazement that somehow Dr. Chase must have gotten hold of celestial bronze to fashion his bullets. The first row of snake women wailed as the machine gun's volley blew them into sulphurous yellow powder. That's my dad," Annabeth said in amazement. We didn't have time to admire his flying. The giants and snake women were already recovering from their surprise. Dr. Chase would be in trouble soon. Just then, the moonlight brightened, and a silver chariot appeared from the sky, drawn by the most beautiful deer I had ever seen. It landed right next to us. "Get in," Artemis said. Annabeth helped me get Talia on board. Then I helped Artemis with Zoe. We wrapped Zoe in a blanket as Artemis pulled the reins and the chariot sped away from the mountain, straight into the air. "Like Santa Claus's sleigh," I murmured, still dazed with pain. Artemis took time to look back at me. "Indeed, young half-blood. And where do you think that legend came from?" Seeing us safely away, Dr. Chase turned his biplane and followed us like an honor guard. It must have been one of the strangest sights ever for even the Bay Area. A silver flying chariot pulled by deer, escorted by a Sopwith camel. Behind us, the army of Kronos roared in anger as they gathered on the summit of Mount Tamalpais. But the loudest sound was the voice of Atlas, bellowing curses against the gods as he struggled under the weight of the sky.